Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Monica and welcome back to another video. I wanted to quickly go through my top 10 reads of 2022. I would have had this done probably a few days ago if it wasn't for being sick and losing my voice, but it's what it is and I wanted to get it out before, at least by January 2nd. It is New Year's Eve right now and TCU is playing Michigan and my family, we bleed maize and blue. So if you hear screaming and yelling and clapping and cheering in the background, that is why, and I am right there with them. And I've been thinking about Jess from Peace Love Books because she is an Ohio State fan. And how they're going to be playing later on tonight, or if they're started playing now, I'm not sure. But anyway, let's get to why I am filming this video. So this is my top 10 reads of 2022. So coming in at number 10 is A Matter of Temptation by Stacy Reid. This book did not come as a complete surprise. I love Stacy Reid. I discovered her back in 2020, and I have read almost her entire backlist. I absolutely love her writing. She's a phenomenal writer. She tells a very solid story and her characters are entertaining. They're also very wonderfully crafted. And in this book, we follow Mina Crawford, who was ruined years ago. And her brother, who's a Viscount, he gets caught gambling, and then in order to try to dissuade people from being trying to make sure that he's not being called out for being a gambler, calls out this Duke. Well, the Duke and the Viscount have a duel. But Mina is very, very good with rapier. She is an excellent swordswoman, and she beats the Duke after taking her brother's place in the duel without his knowledge. She beats him in the duel and he's intrigued and he realizes that she's a woman, and in fact she's the Viscount's sister, and he offers her a job and their love story goes from there, and it is fantastic. All right, next on my list at number 9 is Home Game by Odette Stone. Home Game is I think this is number 2 in the series. It's about a hockey player. Ryan Parker, he is he was sitting in a cafe one day and this girl came in, and he does not know how to do his own taxes, and he's really not that capable to take care of his finances. And she's homeless, and he asks her for her help with his taxes stuff, and so she does help him, but he doesn't know that she's homeless. And when he goes, and because she stays and helps him, she misses the call time for her to get into a shelter. He gets a call from the hospital after and this is a trigger warning for violence against women, as well as near sexual assault on page. He gets a call from the hospital because she had his card, and he brings her home, and this is their love story, and it is beautiful, and it's a 5-star read for me. And after reading Home Game, I went back and read the first book and read the last 2 books in the series, plus the spin-off. Yep, they probably got a touchdown. We love football in my family. So yeah, I highly recommend Home Game. Number 8 is Unraveling Him by Kingsley. This is book I love it. This is book 3 in the Bailey Brothers series. This is, I'm sorry, they're funny. This is Evan Bailey. He is very, very much a grumpy guy, and Fiona Gallagher, is very much a sunshiny girl. He is very much also a recluse. I love it. Anyway, I'm sorry, this is really funny. They're funny. So Fiona Gallagher knows of Evan Bailey because he works on car restorations, and her father owns a shop in Seattle. Well, come to find out that her father and her best friend are doing some sneaky stuff. She goes off and she decides that she is going to go see Evan Bailey and get his help. She has some information on some parts that he needs for a restoration, and this is partly road trip, but it's also very much forced proximity because she ends up staying with him after the road trip. And this is absolutely 5-star read. Number 7 is Kill Switch by Penelope Douglas. Penelope Douglas and I kind of have a love-hate relationship. I have read 8, 9 of her books, and I've only truly loved 2. And this one is the reason why I love Penelope Douglas. This and Birthday Girl. Like, Birthday Girl is just the OG taboo for me. I absolutely love her. I love that book. Daddy Pike is just, mwah. Anyway, but this is Damon's story. And Damon caused Winter's blindness back when they were kids. Damon, if you read, this is part of the Devil's Night series. You have to read them in order. You cannot bounce around in them. I wish I could have bounced around in them, but there is a scene in Corrupt that lives rent-free in everybody's heads that takes place in a sauna. And that's the only reason when I heard about that, I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta figure this out. I want to know why. I needed to know why, so I started reading Corrupt, but then I got to meet Damon, and he was so horrible in the first few books. I mean, he was the villain in the first few books. But this is his redemption story. I love me a very, very, very good redemption story. It has to be, the guy has to be really, really bad, and there has to be a reason for it, and there has to be a way for him to come back. The only other redemption story that truly worked for me, besides Kill Switch, is Redemption by Nikki Sloan. Daddy McAllister. Oh my gosh, I love that guy. But I digress. Anyway, so Damon stalks her. He bullies her, and it sounds horrible, and it is. But he is, you touch her and he will not just kill you. He will ruin the lives of everybody you love while you watch, and then maybe he'll kill you. So this is definitely a 5-star read, but be aware there's a lot of trigger warnings. You need to go and check them, but I highly recommend this one. Okay, coming in at number 6 is Bittersweet Heart by H. Hunting, aka Helena Hunting, or Helena Hunting. I'm not sure how you say it. Is it Helena or Helena? Let me know. I don't know. Anyway, this is one of the best books. This one is Maverick's story. Maverick is Violet and Alex's son. Violet and Alex are the main couple in Pucked. These are not like Pucked. Pucked are silly, they're funny, they're raunchy, they're a good time. This is very, very heavy. You need to check the trigger warnings for domestic violence. That's one of them. There's talk about mental health issues, and specifically you do need to read the first one in the story in this series, because this is book 2 in this. It's called The Lies Hearts and Truth series. The first book is called Little Lies, and that's his sister, what's her name? Lavender's stories. And Lavender was kidnapped when she was a little kid. That's not a spoiler, but he felt responsible for that. So he has a lot of trauma based upon stuff that happened in his family when he was a kid. He is a hockey player in college, and this is a student-teacher romance. And the way they meet is so funny. I mean, they meet when she falls asleep on a raft with a book on her belly, and she gets a sunburn, and it's a book-shaped sunburn, but she accidentally floats into him when they're at the lake. And it goes from there. I highly, highly, highly recommend this one, but you really ought to read. You don't need to read the Puck series to read these, but you really do need to read Little Lies first. So, Bittersweet Heart by H. Hunting. All right, coming up, number 5. You all know me. You know I love myself a good Devney Perry book. And there's 3 that I were able to choose from this year. But I try to keep my top 10 with non-repeat author entries because I want to keep it fair. So it was Juniper Hill and then Garnet Flats, and they both were 5-star reads for me. I love both of them. But The Brawl. Y'all, The Brawl is fantastic. This is the latest book in her Calamity Montana series, and she's writing as, you guys, she's writing as Willa Nash, and I love her. I love her to pieces. I love her writing. I love her characterization, and I love this meet cute. He just sees the heroine outside of his window when he first moves to Calamity, Montana. He's a lawyer, and he drops a $20 bill, so he has an excuse to talk to her, and she doesn't buy it. This is Ronan and, oh gosh, what's her name? Lark. Ronan and Lark. Lark is a single mom, and she shoots him down. They become neighbors, and then one of her students tries to sue her for a bad grade, and goes to Ronan for legal help to sue Lark. And it goes on from there, and it is so, so good. Devney Perry writes incredibly good small town romances. Okay, number 4, spots 3 and 4, or spots 4 and 5, were kind of like, I don't know which one I wanted to do because I loved them both equally, but I'm giving it to Catherine Cowles. Reckless Refuge. They live on a small island, just the 2 of them, and I remember, it's been a while, but her name is Shay, and I gotta remember his name. His name's Brody. Okay, so he is an artist, and someone in the vein of Criminal Minds is using his work, artwork as a way of killing other people. They display the body in the way he drew his in reference to his artwork, and so he feels horrible, so he goes to this he buys a private island, and she's the caretaker. She's hiding from her brother who killed their parents with a very large chef's kitchen knife, and his name is Michael. And if you know me, I have watched all the Halloweens. I have watched all the Screams and all of that. But when they said, his name is Michael, and he's going after his sister with a kitchen knife, I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta read this book. And that's actually what made me read this book. It wasn't the whole, because this is actually the first book in the series that I read. And I loved it. It is nothing like Halloween, so don't worry about that. No stalking babysitters or anything. But the mind games that are played with Michael, by Michael, against Shay, but the love story takes front and center. So it's not a horror, it's not a there is suspense. This is a romantic suspense, but I could feel the heat and the passion between Shay and Brody. It leapt off the pages and it was fantastic. I highly recommend this one. It's not scary, I promise. It's just sort of the name of Michael stalking his sister, and he's psychotic. Yeah, so that's why I picked it up. I'm weird, don't worry about it. But I also really wanted to read Catherine Cowles when I picked it up, and I never looked back because I absolutely love her writing. She is a fantastic writer. She does pacing incredibly well. If you do read her back to back, you kind of figure out her pattern on how she writes things. So, but this is the one out of all her books. This is my favorite. Okay, now my top 3. And this one was a little hard. Well, the 2 and 3 were hard for me. 1 was a no-brainer. So number 3 is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. This is my first Kennedy Ryan book, and it definitely will not be my last. Check trigger warnings for marriage and trouble. Well, they're already divorced, but they still love each other. Check trigger warnings for loss of a child, late term. It was she lost her baby at like 36 weeks, so it was a late term miscarriage, and it feels like some cheating, but it really isn't, but it feels like it, so be prepared for that. But this girl can write. Holy crap. Kennedy Ryan can write an incredible story. She makes you feel, she makes you work for that HEA. She makes her characters work for that HEA. And you still love her at the end. I loved the journey that Yasmin and Josiah went through. This is talking about mental health and dealing with a loss, and we know that they're divorced at the beginning, and but the thing is with this is she was drowning in her grief, and she could not let herself, she was not healing when she asked him for the divorce, and he needed to heal too. So basically this is a case of both of them needing to heal separately before they could come back together and heal together. And it is one of the most beautiful stories I've ever read. The characters were insightful and very in-depth and believable. I loved the side characters. I loved even the dog. The dog was fantastic. This is romantic women's fiction. They call it women's fiction, but there's a heavy slant of romance in here. And it's definitely more women's fiction than romance, I think. But I loved it. I loved every minute of this book. And it will take you through a heart-wrenching journey. And I highly recommend it. Number 2. So my next 2 books I read for the first time this year, but I also reread them within the year. So Always Practice Safe Hacks by Juliette Cross. This is Livy Savoy and Gareth Blackwater. He is a Grimm. She is a witch. And this is, I want to say book 4. Yeah, this is book 4 in the series. Book 5 also came out, which is Resting Witch Face. But this one, Resting Witch Face, did not pass this one. This one is hot, and it was hot, it was sexy, it was, you really do need, again, check the trigger warnings for assault, child abuse, in the past, not on page, but it is talked about workplace harassment, there's so much in this book. I'm trying to remember all of it. I mean, I've read this twice already, but the one thing that really sticks out in my mind with this book is Gareth. He is incredibly intelligent, and he wanted Livy Savoy, and because he knew she was his match, she complimented her light complimented his dark, and it is kinky. This book is very kinky. This is probably the most dirty of her books that I have read from her. But you get that HEA, and you do have to work for that HEA, and it is the best book in the series, and so far it is my favorite Juliette Cross book. So my #1 book. So remember in my last video I talked about how I read a lot of fantasy, more like paranormal romance books, and if you follow me and you hear me talking, this will be no surprise. Lothaire by Kresley Cowles is my favorite. I was intrigued by Lothaire because this, I think, is book 12-ish. Yeah, there's a lot of books in this series. I decided to read the Immortals After Dark series because I heard Kresley Cowles was coming out with Monroe, and I read the description for Monroe. I was like, oh, that sounds good, but I think I'm gonna have to read from the beginning. So I did. Kresley Cowles has this whole series on fated mates. And there's one character that comes in throughout the entire series. Her name is Nixie, and she is completely fabulous. She's crazy because she can see the future, but she's fabulous, and I absolutely love her, and I love the way she tries to help people. It is hysterical, and I would never want her to try and help me. But we do meet Lothaire. He has been a villain pretty much since book 1, and he gets his own book. He is a millennia old vampire prince, and he is going crazy because he drinks too many people, gets their memories, trying to figure out how to defeat his enemies, has a logbook of all these Lorians, and because he collects favors. That's what he does. He collects favors, and he is truly a villain. This is a bit of a redemption, not quite, because he doesn't really redeem himself in the end, but he meets, and he thinks he is God's gift to everybody. I mean, this guy, his pridefulness, he outranks Mr. Darcy for pridefulness. So anyway, he's like, no one will ever be as good as me. Then he meets his fated mate. Her name is Elizabeth Pierce, Ellie, and she is a human girl from backwoods Appalachia, West Virginia. And he's like, what? And they have the best banter. Oh my gosh. And there is a thing that happens in this book, and I'm not going to give it away because I really do think you should read this, where he thinks she might not be his mate, his fated mate. He's like, no, not a slight human girl. No, not for Lothaire. But yeah, anyway, she puts him into his place, and it's really hate to love, because he kidnaps her, he destroys her life, he kidnaps her, he always threatens to kill her and her family. I mean, he calls her a hillbilly. He calls her all sorts of names, and she ends up starting to call him Leo when you know that when she starts to fall for him, and it takes you for a ride and is hysterical. And they both do have some growing up, and so there is character development in here. Elizabeth grows up a lot, but so does Lothaire. He does change for the better, somewhat, but he's Lothaire. He's never going to truly be a good guy, and that would be against his characterization. And she's like, oh, let's make him a good guy. No. So, but you have to read you really need to read this series in order. Anyway, those are my top 10 books, and I do recommend all of them, and I do recommend checking trigger warnings, and have a happy new year. And I am so sorry about all this screaming and cheering and all of that, but football's life in our family, and that's just it. Anyway, have a good night and have a happy new year. Please like and subscribe, and I will talk to you in my next video. Good night.